We often treat humor as an essential office tool. When we laugh with colleagues, our bodies release endorphins that physically lower our stress levels, helping a group of individuals settle into a cohesive team. However, this social glue is highly volatile. Because humor relies on subverting expectations, it remains inherently double-edged. To navigate this safely, we have to distinguish irony from its more aggressive cousins. Irony is a complex linguistic skill. It playfully targets an action, an idea, or a statement to highlight a specific absurdity. Sarcasm functions differently because its target is the person. The word itself reaches back to the ancient Greek sarkazine, which literally means to tear flesh. Since sarcasm targets the individual, it functions on a razor-thin margin of trust. In an environment where that trust hasn't been established, the joke effectively acts as a verbal attack. When sarcasm is deployed in a space lacking psychological safety, the listener rarely perceives it as comedy. Instead, it lands as a microaggression. This creates a cycle of hidden bullying. Aggression is masked by the phrase, "just kidding," which allows the speaker to mock others while avoiding the social consequences of a direct insult. The organizational impact is measurable. It drives individual anxiety, causes team members to isolate themselves to avoid the spotlight, and eventually triggers a total breakdown in internal communication. To avoid this alienation, we have to understand the invisible cognitive mechanics that take place the moment a joke is told. Processing sarcasm requires a cognitive function called theory of mind, handled in the brain's right hemisphere. This mechanism forces listeners to look past the literal meaning of words, actively inferring true intent based on context. In person, our brains look for specific biological cues to trigger this process, most notably a slower speech rate and a lower vocal pitch. But in digital communication, these audio-visual anchors vanish. Modern solutions like the rolling eyes emoji are simply attempts to replace the biology we lose when we move to text. Without these contextual anchors, the brain struggles to verify the speaker's playfulness. When forced to guess the intent behind a biting comment, a reader often prioritizes the most self-protective interpretation, that the speaker is being hostile. These risks are even higher in global business. Experts use the term psychic distance to describe the gap in cultural norms that can disrupt even the most straightforward international operations. As this data shows, language barriers and cultural differences are cited as the primary obstacles to global communication, outpacing even the logistical difficulties of time zones and accents. Low-context cultures like the US often use sarcastic banter to build rapport, but high-context collectivist cultures, such as Japan or China, prioritize indirectness and group harmony. A joke that feels like lighthearted bonding to a Western manager can easily land as a face-threatening insult to an Eastern colleague. Humor requires intense cultural translation. If the baseline for what constitutes a joke isn't shared, the attempt at wit only serves to reinforce the distance between the two parties. Because the risk of wounding a colleague is so high, professional humor relies on cognitive empathy as a safety net. The most effective way to use humor in a professional setting is through self-deprecation. Poking fun at your own mistakes builds trust and shows confidence. In contrast, making a colleague's mistake the punchline reinforces power dynamics and invites immediate conflict. High-performing communicators use a 3-second filter. They read the room, check for inclusivity, and target ideas, not people. The golden rule of professional wit is non-negotiable. Successful humor never comes at someone else's expense. Leaders shouldn't try to sanitize the office by banning humor. Instead, the goal is to cultivate it with intention. Properly calibrated humor acts as a social release valve. It allows a team to address stress and highlight shared values without risking individual injury. When a team masters this, they see the real benefits: elevated resilience, a boost in collective creativity, and a unified structure built on genuine connection. Mastering the social mechanics of workplace wit comes down to a deliberate, repeatable practice, the consistent application of empathy and situational awareness.